Hey everyone, welcome to the Not a Lonely Coffee Break podcast. We are your hosts. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Meaghan. We're a podcast about coffee and work, but make it queer.
I know that the last couple of episodes I've kind of been bringing up like Labyrinth's take on him backing out of
Yeah.
Euphoria. Euphoria just released it. I have
Mhm.
actually not watched any, but I have been seeing a lot on the music, the soundtrack, the vibe of the entire show is completely like 180'd and it's flipped. Some are saying, Elle is actually reporting the representation of women is different and the experiences of women is very different.
Mhm.
I think the creative direction may have had more female leadership in the last couple seasons. And now you have like a completely different show with a completely different vibe with a new music inspiration, director lead, creative lead. It's just all over the place. It feels it's like a completely different show according to these
Yeah,
rules.
yeah. I have seen a lot of stuff online that it feels disconnected almost.
Yeah.
But I know one thing, a lot of the characters navigate trauma and are impacted by lots of things. I know there's also kind of some instances of unhealthy relationships, domestic violence situations happening in various relationships. We are doing a special collaboration right now with our friends at True Self Inc., benefiting Hope Store New Beginning Center, which is a domestic violence shelter in the DFW area. And they're experts in this. And
Yeah.
so I'm so grateful that we can highlight them throughout this month and the amazing work that they do to support people who are navigating perhaps their own unhealthy relationships or relationships that are unsafe for them to be in. So I'm really excited because we're going to be joined today by Meaghan Valdez as well as Tarrah Lantz. They both are going to talk about their agency and the work that they do, as well as just give us some information about the importance of that holistic approach when it comes to supporting individuals navigating domestic violence. So everyone join us in welcoming Meaghan and Tarrah. We are so excited to have you guys on the show and that we could have both of you here. Can you tell us a little bit about who you are as people?
Yes. Hello. My name is Meaghan Valdez, and I'm the CEO here at Hope Store New Beginning Center. I was named CEO last fall, so very new, but I've been with the organization for quite a few years.
Hi, I'm Tarrah Lantz. I'm the Chief Development Officer at Hope Store New Beginning Center. My purpose and what drives me is that I get to be in the community telling people about the work that we do to empower and uplift domestic violence survivors.
For listeners who may be hearing about Hope Store for the first time, can you share what the organization does and who you serve?
Sure. So we're a domestic violence organization. We've been doing this work for about 40 something years. We pride ourselves on a comprehensive approach. So not only do we serve survivors with all of the emergency crisis intervention via a hotline, 2 emergency shelters, counseling, case management, legal advocacy, housing. We also serve the community. We provide information, workshops, and things about telling the community what domestic violence is, what it isn't, so that they can be equipped to respond appropriately. And then we also have a batterers program. So if we are not addressing those who use violence, the problem, the cycle just keeps going. So we have an accredited batterers intervention prevention program. And through that program, we serve about 400 new individuals every year. It's a 24-week program designed to teach new skills and learn nonviolent behavior.
I know with domestic violence, there's sometimes some stigma, some misconceptions out there about, just like you said, what it is, what it isn't. So what are some of the biggest misconceptions that people have about domestic violence or shelters even?
I think the biggest ones are that it only happens to women and the sole perpetrator of violence is male, which, primarily the statistics show that, yes, it is primarily a violence against women sort of issue. But we do have males that are our victims. They just aren't reporting as often than females who report. It's kind of alleged out there that only about 50% get reported officially. If you look at um, all the statistics and just some of the ones that are here specific to Texas, about 1 in 3 Texans will experience domestic violence in their lifetime, which is a little bit higher than the national average. So
That's a big number.
yes, yes, it is. So we know that it's not just happening to one, type of person, one population. Um, the other one is that there has to be actual physical violence for it to be considered domestic violence. When we know that's not true either. Sometimes people are in grave danger even without any sort of physical violence happening. Like,
It's obviously an issue that disrupts the life. When someone reaches out to Hope Store, what kinds of support are available beyond what we might traditionally imagine?
the number one way people reach out to us is generally our crisis hotline. And when people hear the phrase crisis hotline, I mean, already calling a hotline is a little bit scary.
Yeah.
Even though it can be anonymous and you're not committing to anything when you call a hotline, it's still it feels like a serious step, right? So we want to have all the calls be taken just as seriously as the next. And some of them are people who are right now looking for shelter and they're in danger. Their abuser has just been arrested. They need to get to safety. But we also have a fair amount of folks who are calling saying, I have some questions. So that's what we do a lot of, is answer questions and get people to think about their current situation. We help them with whatever they need when they reach out to us, whether that's through services at our organization or if we need to get them hooked up somewhere else.
You raise a really important point, Meaghan, which is that we give them the resources where they're at. So when I entered the organization, in some ways, I guess I had thought about the work as linear. Like, oh, you seek safety, then you do counseling, then you might need legal, then you might need housing. And so I thought of it in a more like linear fashion. But we have people who reach out to us who may have already made that move to seek safety, but they need the additional services. So you won't see, I mean, everybody's plan of safety and also plan of how we work with them, it all varies. It's all so very different.
Thinking about safety, which is what I think a lot of people think about when we hear domestic violence shelter, domestic violence agency, right? How do you truly help someone create that safety is part one. And part two is, how do you guys, Meaghan, just like you said, it impacts so many communities, so many people. How do you guys help your staff practice that cultural awareness and making sure that they're able to support whatever kind of client is reaching out to you guys for that support?
I think our biggest aim is to make sure that we're removing all barriers to service. So there should be no limitation to seeking service because anyone can truly be a victim. So our goal is to make sure that, we need to meet you where you're at with providing those services. And so what that might look like is creating emotional safety and not just like physical safety. So in the shelter, we can do that. We can remove somebody from a violent situation and create shelter for them. And so that the healing journey can begin.
As she said, and as we've said a little bit already, everyone's journey is going to look a little bit different. So if I called and I needed assistance, what I would need would look very different from Tarrah's or from Meaghan's or from Maddie's, right? Our needs are going to be different. And that is true of every person who's seeking services. Yes. So when we're interacting with anyone, we want to get a sense of who that person is, even in a short amount of time. There's some things that we can find out. We can find out things about their community. Do they have any, resources? Do they have any people in their community that they can reach out to? That's a way of judging whether they're experiencing isolation. So that is essentially what safety planning is. It is just going through kind of a series of questions to find out where the victim is right now. That's a basic principle of, trauma-informed care. And by being trauma-informed, like, you can't look at a survivor's situation and assume, okay, well, this, and this will work because it worked for the last client I saw. Being trauma-informed means you're inherently, very much client-centered, survivor-centered, looking at them individually. And then the other part of your question was how we train staff to work with clients. And it's such a great question because you think that anyone that willingly comes to a social service place to work, like a domestic violence organization, that you're coming with some sort of level of understanding humanity. So I think a lot of the things we can't necessarily teach, it's just something that you have to have. And it's not for everyone, of course, but we do a whole series of training for our staff as well as any volunteers who want to work with clients. There's some required training actually that everyone has to go through based on some of our funding and based on some laws that protect victims. One of which is
For sure.
advocate privilege. So much like an attorney has client attorney privilege with their client, advocates can have something very similar just due to the safety nature of things. Anything that's told to an advocate is protected under confidentiality and privilege.
I didn't know that actually.
Yeah. It's all designed around safety.
Yeah.
And that goes even to releasing information about clients. The training that we offer to community and to staff is about understanding the dynamics of domestic violence. And just in that training, you have to address things like how different factors influence your experience, such as your culture, your race, your social economic status, all of that. So you can't talk about domestic violence without making it a conversation around cultural humility, if that makes sense.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Great answer.
Yeah.
I
I feel like
love
it was really
that.
long, but that's always
But what I was thinking about when Megan was talking was like, let's say I might be Muslim or Jewish, or I have something that like is part of my identity, my culture, whatever it may be.
Right. Yeah.
And I know that I'm going to be calling upon a service. For instance, we have bilingual counselors and bilingual advocates. So our Spanish speaking friends will always have a comforting voice and a comforting person to confide in, an advocate to work with. We have access to different resources to just make sure that we've kind of inherently and sort of unintentionally built those into the organization. So if somebody comes to us and we're not able to maybe communicate or whatever, we will seek those resources to be able to make sure that we can help someone. So it just made me think about like the safety of knowing, oh, if I reach out, will they be able to truly help? And the answer is yes. But I think everybody has that right to live a life free of abuse and violence. I think one of the other myths to debunk is that domestic violence only happens to heterosexual couples. We know that is not true.
No, I love that. And that's something I know about you guys as well, that you do if you're not the best maybe fits based on services that they need. I do know that you guys will work to try to identify how can we still help this person identify a safety plan that works for them. Do we need to jiggle the tree a little bit to get them connected to someone else? Or can we figure out a way to help them through Hope Store? I also know you guys have had a few queer individuals, some trans individuals that have come through Hope Store New Beginning Center for support and have been vocal about having a positive experience in their healing journey. So I love it. Yay, y'all.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that like what y'all just serve like such a comprehensive outlook to what these survivors might be facing, and because like you said, everything is just so like it's just a case by case basis. Like it's never like it's not a cookie cutter service that y'all are providing, and just knowing that internally y'all are providing specific trainings or thinking about types of counselors that you're hiring. I mean, that's so important when you're thinking like as a leader in the organization, you know, you're being mindful of those things. You're being mindful of who you're serving and why that y'all are so successful, And so, I mean, and y'all were talking about trauma-informed care and how, we have to really implement, why or how these survivors are facing trauma, right? And what that might look like. So how does trauma from abuse affect someone's mental health in ways that people may not immediately recognize?
Well, that's a great question. And I think that's one of the things that contributes to a lot of misunderstanding about what domestic violence is and what it's not, right? So, an example, I went through expert witness testimony training many years ago. And have provided a handful of expert witness testimonies in various, courts within Dallas, all of which, involve some element of domestic violence. And the sole purpose of using me was to explain the impact that domestic violence has on your life in general, and kind of the impact of trauma and what that looks like, because what that looks like is very different from what things look like on TV. When you think courthouse victim telling the story, you think, oh, they're giving all the information, the whole timeline. It's easy to follow. They're strong and everything, which is true. But when you've experienced trauma, that is really going to impact how your brain works and how your brain processes information. The biggest piece is in being able to tell a story, to recall timelines and things like
Yeah.
that, but also in reactive behaviors. When you've experienced trauma, you're already kind of on guard. Your fight, flight, or freeze has been activated, when you're activated in that way, you are not going to be responding the way that you normally would, right? So we, as service providers, or even people in the community, can look and look at somebody's situation and think, why didn't they just leave? Or, why are they continuing to go back? How come they won't just go and get a job and move and get a divorce? Like, why aren't they doing those things? And the answer to that is stop asking those questions, number one. Like, let's not ask a survivor why they stayed. The correct question should be, why was that abuser using violence, right?
I just went to a luncheon that talked about neuro leadership, and I was like, I've heard of leadership luncheons, but never like neuro leadership. And they've done studies where cortisol, which is that, stress hormone, and I imagine is probably at like mega heightened levels under trauma.
Yeah.
They have done studies where they've been able to tell that cortisol actually eats the neurons in your brain. And if that's true, then you're changing somebody's brain completely in the way that it develops. And so I was sitting there thinking about don't stress, don't let the cortisol eat those neurons. And it sounds so weird. It's that magnified, just by exponentially for those who've experienced trauma. And what I think about, you had asked about queer and trans folks. I mean, I think about if somebody were to ask well, why would you stay with somebody? Why would you stay with somebody who's threatening to out you? Or why would you stay with somebody who is going to use stereotypes against you? Or, we may innocently be asking those questions, but we are still harming the victim in their thinking process about how to escape.
What I was hearing through that conversation is that throughout this time that you're experiencing trauma, there's not an age limit on how you experience these things. But if you're in a situation, especially at a young age, and what I've heard, honestly, that there's some studies that they're saying that your brain actually doesn't stop developing till your late 20s. And I'm like, if you're experiencing that over and over, and even though you may have experienced it as a teenager, sometimes we fall into those same patterns because we didn't have the ability to learn how to get out of those patterns. How do you guys help rebuild that confidence, trust, and stability after they experience that trauma?
I think that's one of the questions that is really leading the research right now in how to serve survivors. Because if you look at the sort of timeline and history of domestic violence movement, it was started by survivors, right? There was no infrastructure anywhere. It was only this happens between husband and wife, and you just don't talk about it. It was the 70s. Like, some women couldn't even get a bank account without their husband or their dad, right? But they were able to understand that what they were experiencing was not okay. So they sort of started this movement by just being available to each other, and by sharing their story and sharing their experience. The movement has gone from just sort of underground survivors, grassroots stuff, to an actual, we have best practices, and we've got research out there that really guides our work. And for the last at least 20 years, the research has really been driven on what survivors actually need, right? Because just because I have a degree in social work and know how systems work, that doesn't mean I have all the answers to what survivors need, right? Most of the time, the survivors have the answers. Like they know their situation the best. We're just here for the objective feedback. So part of the advocacy relationship, whether that's with a counselor or a crisis advocate or case management, really to make the biggest impact, you do have to have some sort of connection, right? There's studies out there that say that kids need just one adult in their life to relate to and to talk to, and they automatically have better outcomes. And I would say that that's true for adults also. Oftentimes, when people are coming to us, we're the first people they're telling their story to, or we're the first people to sit down and tell them, we believe you.
Sounds like you do a lot of even partnerships
Yes.
to really help create that relationship and just help them kind of rebuild whatever it is.
I love our shelter staff. I asked them a few weeks ago, I said, I need to know some of your small wins that you've had lately.
Yeah.
And some of them were just like, they seemingly were just like so benign, right? Like what we may consider as just another chore for us. They helped a woman get eyeglasses so that she could get her driver's license. Once she has that driver's license, that could change the trajectory of her whole
Absolutely.
life moving forward. So
That's
now she can gain employment and get from point A to point B. And I mean, I said, you do realize that is not just a small win. That's like a giant, big, small step, like huge. And then they were able to help somebody find a copy of their diploma so that they were able to then get into higher level schooling. And I was like, this is incredible work because you're in that compassionate building rapport phase. You are giving somebody true hope to be able to take those steps on their own to move forward. Because I think so much about, people need to be able to do this work on their own as well. They can't just be told, like, we're going to rebuild your life and you're going to follow step X, Y, Z, and then do ABC. And it just doesn't work that way.
right.
Like, people
No.
have to make some moves.
Absolutely. It's interesting you say that, Tarrah. I think and your perspective might even be better than the perspective that like Meaghan and I have from that clinical mindset. But
Yep.
what do you wish that more sort of these community facing places, so workplaces, schools, just communities at large, understood about supporting survivors?
Gosh, that is so like open ended. Because what I think about is, I mean, I jokingly would love to run a podcast called Philanthropy Gone Bad. Be seen.
You should.
And where I'm like, okay, this is great. I love that you spent all this money and all this time, but like really, maybe you should have asked what the survivor needed or the organization or what we needed prior to doing the work. So there's that aspect of partnering is maybe finding out from an organization, what do they need to truly help the clients they're serving? But I also think, from like a workplace perspective, knowing that you are not having somebody who may be experiencing domestic violence closing by themselves at night, for instance, is one of those things that just I really think about, like you're creating a safety issue for someone. So if you are an employer and somebody comes to you and says, here is a picture of the person that I am scared of, that I have a restraining order against, I cannot have them near me. Listen and do something about that. Put systems in place that protect your employee. Then thinking about like larger community groups, believe them. And like Meaghan said earlier, quit asking, why aren't you leaving? Like, why aren't you leaving? Because on average, it takes up to 7 times for someone to leave. Then rephrase that to thinking like, why is the abuser abusing? And then why are they using violence? And like, let's as a society figure out how we can shift that. So that's kind of where I think about that.
Yeah.
Also, to your point about workplaces, can we just say that like that's a good practice regardless? We shouldn't have anyone closing by themselves. Like we want all of our employees to be safe.
Yes, I hate that. I hate that so much. It's dark out there.
And what if your parking lot doesn't have lights?
Yes,
Right.
it's dangerous. Yeah, absolutely. I love the way you put that. It's like we just need to reframe that narrative. A lot of people don't know how to speak up. A lot of us, they don't. I mean, I've been in situations and I'm like, what do I do to, try? I don't know how to help, right? And it can be extremely scary because if you've ever seen someone who's been, inflicted by violence, and they just, they don't say, they keep saying, I'm fine. You're like, okay, well, I'm going to trust that they're okay, but really that's not the case. So, how can friends or family respond better when someone discloses this information? Or maybe what happens if they don't disclose it? What are ways that we can, possibly intervene in a safe way for the survivor to get what they need?
Yeah. So that's a great point because the term safety is just key here. Even when we're working with somebody, trained professionals on a hotline somewhere, we're not getting the exact full story. So we don't necessarily know everything. We can make some informed decisions and some informed like next steps based on the story that they're saying. But that doesn't change if you're working with somebody that you know very well, a friend, a sister, a community member or something, and you're talking to them in person. You do want to keep their safety and your own safety really at the front and center.
Right.
And just as a friend, bystander, any of that, you're not required to have all the answers. Really, the only thing that I would say that people, loved ones of those who have experienced violence, is to just believe them, be a sounding board, and perhaps recommend, have you ever talked to somebody that is like an expert in this? Have you ever reached out? I'm happy to sit with you while you reach out if you want. Or, just whatever it is that would help you feel more comfortable, let me know. And that's really hard to do, I think, even for people who've done this work for a long time.
I think what's hard for someone like me, because I'm a problem solver / fixer. So if I have a friend or a loved one who comes to me, I'm all like, I'm going to fix this. And like, wait, they're beating you. I'm going to go beat them. Like, we'll have those responses, right? I think what's important to remember is that, and I don't have the statistic, I just know that the most dangerous time for somebody to where their life could potentially be at danger is at the moment that they do decide to leave. So when get a friend or family member involved, or that friend and family member like comes with you to a house or an apartment to gather things, that could be the most dangerous time. So it's I think it's also being humble and giving yourself grace in that moment to recognize, like, push pause for a minute when a friend or family member tells you this, because you need to practice true empathy. Think about Brene Brown telling us to get down into the hole with somebody, just listen to them, what they're saying, call the hotline, be with them, but you don't have to problem solve that for them.
Tarrah, you bring up such an excellent point, because I think, first of all, you're not the only person in the world that is a problem solver / fixer. A lot of people are.
Thank
A lot of
goodness.
people are.
To
And I
be
think
master's level problem solvers. Like we went into depth to do that.
right. I think that sometimes is what makes it hard for people sometimes to remember that they're human. And sometimes people aren't looking for your opinion. They're not looking for you to give them a solution. They might just be looking for you to sit with them. And I think that also the fact that we do have a very opinionated society about some of these hot topic things like domestic violence and mental health, and everyone thinking about what they should do or what they would do, it prevents people from reaching out for help. And then we also have the people who, when someone does maybe finally come forward, we don't believe them because of our own opinions about things. And evidence of that is just, I think, Meaghan, you highlighted earlier, like how things are portrayed in the media. And everyone online has their opinion about what actually happened. And we forget the people who were involved and what they're telling us happened. And I just think it's important that we believe people.
Yeah, absolutely. Because particularly domestic violence survivors, they have been told what to do and what they should do and what they should not do. Like that's part of the control. So just offering that space, even if, if you've been told over and over that you don't know anything, insert all of the above, making a simple decision, like a very simple decision, can be really, really hard and excruciating, just because it's like, well, I've not really been able to make any decisions. So I don't even want to make a decision to make a phone call because I could do it wrong, So putting all your advice and your to-dos and this is what you should do on a survivor that's just adding more to their plate.
Yeah.
So just being able to listen is the biggest advice.
Yes. So we're honored to have you guys here because we've been promoting something special all this month. We partnered with True Self Inc. to do a mental health awareness month collaboration, and a portion of the proceeds are going to go directly to you guys to help continue providing the awesome work that you do. And I think it's important for us to maybe share with our listeners who might be like, domestic violence, mental health, what? Why is mental health support such an important part of survivor services?
I would say it's really almost impossible to separate mental health from domestic violence just because it is a traumatic experience. If you experience a really traumatic car accident, you can still be diagnosed with PTSD, right? And need therapeutic services for that. The same goes for anyone who's experienced domestic violence. But I think it's also important to look at mental health as a preventative measure, not that it's going to prevent you from experiencing domestic violence or prevent you
Yeah.
specifically from perpetrating domestic violence, because perpetrating domestic violence and mental health a little bit intertwined, but it's not a cause. Somebody's not abusive because they have mental illness, right? Abuse, choosing violence is a choice, right? The mental health may be a contributing factor or something, but it's not the cause. And it's certainly not the cause of anyone experiencing domestic violence. But when you have a preventative, preemptive approach to mental health, to understanding the basics of mental health, which to me, the basics are understanding what a boundary is and how to do it, not just as a grown up, but as a kid. That's an important skill. Right. And I'm saying this as a woman of a certain age who identifies as a Gen Xer. We were not told to say no, particularly to men or boys or anything, because we weren't supposed to hurt their feelings, all of that. So like I'm from a generation where like we were kind of told to take care of other people's needs, not just men, but just saying no, they're gonna hurt people's feelings is not exactly something you should do as a lady, right? And we know that that's fairly dangerous to do, because if you're in a situation that you don't feel safe, you need to be able to say, "Oh, I don't feel safe in this situation," and that is mental health. That's being able to set a boundary comfortably and having those organic ways to build resilience that most of us have growing up. Those who are experiencing violence, they're not going to have those organic opportunities. Like if you're trying to keep your family safe because there's an abusive person in the home, you're not exactly looking at ways to foster various skills in children. We're just looking at survival. For yourself. I think earlier on we were talking about, going to therapy and learning these things. That's hard enough to do just without experiencing violence, right? It's hard. So it's work.
I've always thought of therapy as a gym membership for your mind, because really you have to get over that hurdle and you have to be able to say, okay, I'm committed to like working on this, to being deliberate, to being intentional. And it's a really hard work, but the results will pay off. Megan and I both have teenage aged children, and teaching them about like, what does a healthy relationship look like? What is consent? Those sort of preventative, education programs that we run are so helpful for kids in the community and for young adults to hear.
Yeah, and it's that cycle of abuse, and it's generational. If your parents don't know how to, maybe they were in that abusive situation and now they have teenagers, maybe they don't have those resources or some of those skills on how to identify what a healthy relationship actually looks like and how people should treat each other or talk to each other. Just because you're having an argument doesn't mean that you're screaming at the top of your lungs or that, you're doing physical things with that argument. But if that's all you know, then you're like, yeah, that's fine. So I'm so glad that y'all provide those preventative services, because it's all about breaking that cycle and how do we help that next generation be able to identify, when to seek help or when to get out of a relationship and how to advocate for themselves. So
Mhm.
I love that. Yeah.
I
I'm
know
like so
lots.
excited.
I know there's so much. There's so much that you guys do. We are so excited we were able to put this collaboration together. Are you guys planning on getting a tattoo?
Man, I am always planning on getting a tattoo. Always.
Same.
It's been approximately 20 years since my last one.
It's
So
time.
it's time. It's
It's
time.
time. It's
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
I'm feeling a bit of peer pressure because I have tattoos on that.
For those listeners who may not want
Mhm.
to get a tattoo, like what is another way that they could possibly support the
Yes.
organization?
Many ways people can help. I mean, my job is to be our chief fundraiser. So, I mean, we'll always just take your money instead of a tattoo. I mean, I will never say no to that. But, one of the projects I would love to see is for people, I'm a public radio listener, give $10 a month and have for my entire adult life to public radio. If somebody wants to be a recurring donor, that would be excellent at a small donation each month or a large donation. But the other thing we have, which is super fun, if you are listening and you have not been to our resale shop, it's at the northwest corner of Parker Road and Custer in Central Plano. So if you want to volunteer, one of the easiest ways is volunteering at that resale store, just hanging up
Mhm,
clothes,
mhm.
helping tag things, doing, some sweeping and reorganizing. It's so much fun.
Yeah, so lots of opportunities to get connected. If you are feeling a little nervous about getting a tattoo, don't worry. You can support Hope Store by going to their website, visiting them on social media, and checking out all the different ways to get involved.
I will say that the tattoos are very cute, and my
They are.
favorite one is the Cheers Queers one.
Yes.
So if somebody
Definitely
gets
watch
that,
that.
I will just stand there and applaud because
Megan and I got that one.
Yeah.
Look, can an ally have that one? And Maddie said I could. So
Yes, absolutely. An ally can have that one. All right. Well, thank you guys for joining us and
Yeah.
having this great conversation where we could learn a little bit more about Hope Store as well as domestic violence. And again, listeners, you can go to their website, check everything out.
Thank you.
Yay!
Thanks.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, I just feel like domestic violence isn't talked about enough. It's continued, like, regardless of the attention it's gotten, regardless of the resources, and we know what drives it. It's still
Yeah.
so ingrained in our society. It's ingrained in
Right.
relationships, and so I'm so glad that we were able to bring them
Mhm.
on. And then also, don't forget, y'all, we've got that flash tattoo with True Self Ink going on for the entire month of May. So
Mhm.
we hope that you were able to get a good sense of what Hope Store New Beginnings is, and you feel pretty good about the tattoo you're getting, of course.
Of course. And I'm so grateful that they joined us today. It was such a great conversation. I know it was a little deep and a little heavy, but I mean, that's how we learn, right? Is to have those meaningful, impactful conversations to hopefully reduce some of the stigma that's out there about these big topics that should be getting more airwaves, should be getting talked about more. Unfortunately, though, I am all out of coffee. So that is our cue to wrap up. But thank you all for joining us for this chat today. Make sure that you are subscribed to our channels. If you are not already, why not? Go ahead and hit that subscribe.
So be sure you're connected with us on those socials and continue the conversation. We'd love to hear your questions or your experiences navigating the workplace.
Absolutely. We love social media. You can find us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and Patreon. And of course, you can always check out the show on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. We hope that you'll continue joining us for Not a Lonely Coffee Break. Again, we are your hosts. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Megan. Cheers.
Cheers, queer.